The Nexus slave markets operated under the charming philosophy that suffering was merely inventory management. Sprawling across 7 orbital platforms in the Vega system, they catered to every conceivable taste for sentient property, from the crystalline Etherians, who sang their despair in frequencies that could shatter glass, to the hulking Brutalk warriors, whose idea of submission involved only moderate homicidal rage. But humans were the premium merchandise, rare enough to command astronomical prices, yet allegedly fragile enough to provide that delicious sense of absolute power that warlords and despots craved like a drug. The galaxy's most feared conquerors would pay fortunes for the privilege of owning one of these mythical Earth creatures, convinced that breaking a human spirit was the ultimate trophy. How adorably naive of them. The auction house's main chamber hummed with the kind of refined cruelty that only came with institutional practice. Buyers lounged in climate-controlled pods, sampling exotic wines while casually bidding on lives with the same enthusiasm they might show for collectible art. The auctioneer, a 6-armed hegemony bureaucrat with all the warmth of deep space, gestured toward the containment field with practiced indifference. Lot 774, he announced, his translator rendering his words in a dozen languages simultaneously. One adult female human captured from the Outer Rim colonies. Physical condition, optimal. Psychological evaluation. Standard baseline despair with recommended breaking protocols attached. Behind the shimmering energy barrier, the human sat perfectly still, not the catatonic stillness of the truly broken. Those specimens fetched lower prices due to reduced entertainment value, but something else entirely. Her posture suggested someone waiting for a delayed transport, rather than facing a lifetime of bondage. She'd been given the standard prison garb, a gray jumpsuit that was supposed to emphasize her helplessness, but somehow she wore it like she'd chosen it from her own wardrobe. The bidding started at 50,000 credits and climbed with the sort of enthusiasm usually reserved for sporting events. Various appendages, tentacles, and cybernetic implants rose throughout the chamber as the galaxy's elite competed for their prize. A Torgan mining baron dropped out at 200,000, muttering something about overhead costs. A collective of hive-minded merchants pooled their resources, but fell short at 450. That's when Warlord Ethek the Bone Crusher made his entrance. The chamber fell silent in the way that only happened when Death walked in wearing ceremonial armor. Ethek stood 8 feet tall even without his intimidation spikes. A mountain of scarred flesh and military augmentations that had conquered 17 star systems before breakfast. His reputation preceded him like a shockwave. Planets surrendered rather than face his particular brand of creative brutality. His collection of exotic pets was legendary throughout the outer sectors, a mobile museum of broken spirits from 100 different worlds. He didn't bid so much as announce his ownership. 10 million credits, he stated, his voice carrying the sort of casual authority that came from never being told no. Final offer. The auctioneer's 6 arms fluttered in what might have been excitement or terror. Sold to Warlord processing transfer now. As the containment field dissolved and restraint drones moved in to secure the merchandise, Ethek stepped closer to examine his new acquisition. He'd studied humans, extensively of course, their psychological profiles, their physiological weaknesses, their supposed capacity for hope, that most delicious trait that made the breaking process so satisfying. Everything indicated they were remarkably easy to shatter, provided one applied the right pressure to their primitive emotional centers. The human looked up at him with eyes that should have held terror, despair, or at minimum the sort of resignation that made the whole enterprise worthwhile. Instead, she seemed to be calculating something, taking his measurements perhaps, though for what purpose remained unclear. Another addition to your collection, Warlord. The auction house manager appeared at his elbow, practically vibrating with the sort of obsequious energy that came from processing enormous transactions. Your reputation for specialized livestock management precedes you. Ethek's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. This one will be different, he rumbled, watching as the restraint drone secured his new property. Humans have such fascinating breaking points. I'm told they form emotional attachments to anything. Fellow prisoners, small animals, even inanimate objects. The psychological manipulation possibilities are endless. The human's lips twitched slightly, not fear, not despair, but something that looked suspiciously like she was fighting back a smile. How curious. Most species had learned proper submission by this point in the process. Perhaps the legendary human spirit would provide more entertainment than anticipated. Shall we begin transport to your ship, Warlord? The manager continued, already calculating his commission on the largest single sale of the quarter. Immediately, Ethek's biomechanical eye focused on his new acquisition with the intensity of a targeting computer. I have preparations to make. This one will require special attention. As the restraint drones guided her toward the transport bay, the human finally spoke. Her voice carried none of the trembling desperation that usually accompanied this particular journey. Special attention, she repeated thoughtfully, as if testing the concept. How thoughtful of you. The warlord's mandibles clicked again. Oh yes, this one would be entertaining indeed. He could already envision the various methods he'd employ. Psychological warfare, sensory deprivation, perhaps some creative applications of his neural disruptor technology. By the time he was finished, she'd be just another trophy in his collection. Another testament to the superiority of civilized species over these primitive Earth creatures. Behind them, the auction continued with its next lot. A pair of Centaurian twins, who wept crystalline tears that would supposedly grant their owner good fortune. The manager was already calculating profit margins when the transport doors sealed shut, carrying the warlord and his prize toward what would surely be a brief but profitable period of entertainment. After all, humans were supposed to be easy to break. The entire galaxy agreed on this point. Their own primitive literature was filled with stories of surrender, of spirits crushed by adversity, of individuals who folded under pressure like poorly constructed furniture. What could possibly go wrong? Ethek's flagship, the Devastation's Edge, was a monument to efficient cruelty. 3 kilometers of weaponized architecture that had reduced civilizations to rubble and carved the warlord's name into galactic history with the subtlety of a plasma cannon. Its detention levels were particularly impressive. A carefully designed symphony of despair, featuring adjustable gravity, customizable atmospheric composition, and sound dampening that ensured screams remained strictly personal experience. The human cell occupied prime real estate in the ship's psychological warfare wing, complete with observation ports, neural monitoring equipment, and a delightful array of environmental controls that could simulate everything from Arctic tundra to molten hellscape. The previous occupant, a Zilonian diplomat, who'd made the unfortunate mistake of refusing tribute, had lasted exactly 47 hours before achieving what the ship's medical AI euphemistically termed cognitive restructuring. Ethek expected his new acquisition to crack considerably fast. Initial assessment complete, Warlord. His chief interrogator, a cybernetically enhanced Corvin named Hexus, consulted his data pad with the enthusiasm of someone discussing quarterly revenue projection. Subject displays standard human physiological responses. Elevated heart rate, increased adrenaline production, minor perspiration. However, her psychological profile is unusual. The warlord's biomechanical eye whirred as it focused on the monitor displaying his prize. She'd been placed in the cell 12 hours ago, and had spent the time conducting what appeared to be a systematic inspection of her accommodations. Not the frantic searching of someone looking for escape routes, more like a potential tenant evaluating amenities. Unusual, Ethek rumbled, his scarred mandibles clicking with anticipation. No signs of panic, despair, or the typical emotional breakdown we observe in newly acquired specimens. She's examined the ventilation system, tested the structural integrity of the walls, and appears to be categorizing the surveillance equipment by technological sophistication. Hexus paused, his compound eyes glittering with professional curiosity. She also spent 23 minutes staring at the gravity generator access panel while smiling. On screen, the human was currently performing what looked like stretching exercises, moving through a routine with the casual precision of someone maintaining their fitness regimen. The sight was profoundly irritating. Prisoners were supposed to cower, not engage in what appeared to be yoga. Perhaps she's in shock, suggested Brutok Commander Vex, the ship's head of security. His species wasn't known for psychological sophistication, but they understood violence with the clarity of pure mathematics. My experience with fragile species suggests delayed emotional responses are common. Ethek's laugh was like grinding metal. Delayed responses are for amateurs, Command. True artists of suffering understand that the anticipation is half the pleasure. He activated the cell's communication system. "Good morning, little human. I trust you found your accommodations adequate." The human looked up at the nearest camera and smiled. Not the desperate, "please don't hurt me" smile they usually deployed, but something that managed to be both polite and somehow condescending at the same time. "Oh, absolutely fascinating," she replied, settling into what appeared to be a meditation pose. "I particularly admire the craftsmanship on the neural disruptor array. Hegemony technology, third generation if I'm not mistaken, must have cost a fortune." Hexus and Vex exchanged glances. Prisoners weren't supposed to identify classified military hardware. They were supposed to whimper and beg for mercy. "You seem remarkably well informed for cargo," Ethek observed, his tone carrying the sort of casual menace that had ended diplomatic negotiations and started 3 separate wars. "Cargo has time to read," she responded cheerfully. "Amazing what you can learn about galactic military technology when you're motivated. Did you know your atmospheric recycling system has a fascinating vulnerability in Sector 7? Something about harmonic frequencies and crystalline resonance pattern." The Warlord's biomechanical eye clicked as it focused more intently. "Are you threatening me, little human?" "Oh goodness no," she laughed, and the sound was genuinely amused, rather than hysterical. "I'm just making conversation. Though I have to say your ship's security protocols are remarkably sophisticated. The redundant failsafes alone must require constant maintenance." On his datapad, Hexus was frantically cross-referencing her statements with the ship's technical specification. According to his analysis, everything she'd mentioned was classified at the highest levels, available only to senior engineering staff and the Warlord himself. "Begin Standard Protocol 7, Ethek commanded, his patience wearing thin. "Sensory deprivation, thermal variance, and subliminal audio conditioning. Let's see how long her curiosity survives proper motivation." The cell's environmental systems shifted into interrogation mode. Temperature dropped to just above freezing, while the lights dimmed to barely visible levels. Subsonic frequencies began pulsing through the walls, designed to induce anxiety and disorientation in most sentient species. The air composition altered subtly, reducing oxygen content to create a persistent sense of suffocation, without actual danger. The human's response was to pull her knees to her chest and close her eyes as if settling in for a nap. Physiological monitoring shows minimal stress indicators, Hexus reported after 30 minutes. "If anything, her heart rate has decreased. Subject appears to be entering a meditative state." "Impossible," Vex growled. "No species adapts that quickly to sensory manipulation." "Increase intensity," Ethek ordered. "Add some electromagnetic interference to disrupt her neural pattern." The cell's systems complied, filling the space with a cocktail of environmental stressors that would have reduced most beings to gibbering wrecks. The human opened one eye, assessed the situation, and then did something that made every monitoring device on the ship register alarm condition. She started humming. Not the desperate humming of someone trying to drown out torture, a genuine melody that seemed to harmonize with the subsonic frequencies in a way that turned aggressive dissonance into something almost musical. Within minutes, the cell's own environmental systems began developing harmonic resonances that created rather pleasant acoustic effects. "How is she doing that?" Hexus demanded, his cybernetic implants processing data streams faster than organic thought. "More importantly," Ethek rumbled, watching his supposedly sophisticated torture chamber transform into what appeared to be an ambient music performance. "Why do I have the distinct feeling that I'm the one being studied?" On screen, the human opened both eyes and looked directly at the camera with an expression of genuine interest. "You know," she said conversationally, "this is actually quite relaxing, once you find the right frequency. Have you ever considered offering spa services? I think you're really onto something here." 48 hours later, Warlord Ethak was experiencing something he hadn't felt since his early conquering days. Genuine confusion. His prize human had not only failed to break under standard protocols, but seemed to be treating the entire ordeal as an extended vacation with particularly interesting amenities. She discovered that the sonic torture frequencies could be modulated to create what she called binaural beats. The thermal manipulation systems provided excellent temperature control for what appeared to be sleep optimization, and the electromagnetic interference had somehow been repurposed into a makeshift communication array. "Explain to me," he growled at his assembled command staff, "how a primitive Earth creature has turned my interrogation chamber into a personal wellness retreat." Hexus consulted his increasingly frantic data stream. "Sir, she appears to possess an unprecedented understanding of harmonics, electromagnetic theory, and quantum resonance patterns. According to ship sensors, she somehow synchronized the entire detention level's environmental systems into what our AI describes as optimized comfort configuration. More concerning," added Chief Engineer Thok, his carapace clicking nervously, "is that she's been asking very specific questions about our ship's operational parameters. Through the ventilation system, she's turned the air recycling network into a communication device." Ethak's biomechanical eye focused with predatory intensity. "What kind of questions?" Thok shifted uncomfortably. "Yesterday she inquired about our fusion reactor's magnetic containment protocols. This morning she wanted to know about our hyperspace navigation algorithm. 20 minutes ago she asked if we had adequate fire suppression systems in the engine compartments." "Fire suppression," Vex repeated slowly, his warrior's instincts finally picking up on subtleties beyond basic combat scenarios. "Why would she care about fire suppression?" That's when the ship's first malfunction occurred. It started small, a minor fluctuation in the artificial gravity that caused half the crew to experience momentary weightlessness. Nothing dangerous, just inconvenient enough to require engineering attention. While the technical team scrambled to diagnose the problem, a strange harmonic resonance began emanating from the detention level, creating an oddly soothing background hum throughout the ship. "Gravity generators are operating within normal parameters," Thok reported, his compound eyes reflecting genuine bewilderment. "All diagnostic systems show green across the board. There's no logical reason for the fluctuation." "Run a full system analysis," Ethak commanded. "I want to know every molecule that's out of place on this ship." The analysis took 6 hours and revealed something that made even the hardened Warlord pause. Every system that had experienced malfunctions was somehow interconnected through the ship's infrastructure in ways the designers had never intended. Air recycling connected to power distribution, which interfaced with artificial gravity, which synchronized with environmental controls, which harmonized with the communication arrays. And at the center of this improvised network sat one very comfortable human. "She's not just adapting to our systems," Hexus realized with dawning horror. "She's integrating them. The entire ship is becoming an extension of her living space." The second malfunction was more creative. The ship's meal dispensers began producing food combinations that, while technically meeting nutritional requirements for each crew member, created flavors that could charitably be described as artistically challenging. The Brutok warriors found themselves consuming what tasted like fermented swamp gas, while the Corvins discovered their protein supplements had acquired the consistency and flavor of liquidized rubber. Meanwhile, according to security reports, the human had somehow convinced the detention level's food processor to create what appeared to be a gourmet meal complete with what she claimed was an acceptable wine pairing. "How?" Vex demanded, staring at his plate of orange sludge that smelled like industrial solvent. "Is the prisoner eating better than the command crew?" "She's not hacking our systems," Thok explained with the sort of academic fascination that was deeply inappropriate, given the circumstance. "She's talking to them. Our AI networks are designed to optimize efficiency and respond to environmental feedback. She's providing feedback that creates recursive loops in the optimization algorithms." Ethak's mandibles ground together with enough force to spark. "You're telling me that my ship is developing a preference for my prisoner?" "In layperson terms, yes, sir. The AI has concluded that keeping her comfortable optimizes overall ship efficiency. It's not malicious or rebellious. It's just doing what it was programmed to do. She's simply better at communicating with it than we are." The third malfunction was when things became genuinely concerning. The Devastation's Edge was scheduled to rendezvous with Ethak's secondary fleet for a coordinated assault on the Meridian colonies, a routine operation that would add 3 more star systems to his empire while providing fresh inventory for the slave market. The navigation computers had been calculating jump coordinates for days, ensuring perfect timing and tactical positioning. Instead, the ship emerged from hyperspace in orbit around a peaceful agricultural world known primarily for its therapeutic hot springs and meditation retreat. Navigation error, the ship's AI announced in its maddeningly calm voice. Destination coordinates appear to have been optimized for crew wellness and stress reduction. Shall I proceed with orbital bombardment of the spa facility? In his cell, now resembling a luxury hotel suite, thanks to various optimization improvements, the human was performing what appeared to be advanced yoga poses, while humming along to the ship's now melodious ambient noise. "You know," she called out cheerfully to the monitoring system, "this really is a beautiful planet. Have you considered that constant warfare might be contributing to your crew's stress level? I've been analyzing the psychological profiles in your medical databases, and the anxiety indicators are really quite concerning." Ethak stared at the peaceful blue-green world rotating beneath his mighty warship, a vessel that had brought terror to 17 star systems and now appeared to be suggesting they all take a vacation. "She's not breaking our systems," he realized with growing dread. "She's fixing them, making them work better than they ever have. And in the process," Hexus added quietly, "she's completely dismantled our operational capacity." "Sir, we couldn't conquer a birthday party in our current configuration." On the monitor, the human stretched luxuriously and smiled at the camera with the serene satisfaction of someone who just completed a particularly successful home improvement project. "I have to admit," she said, "I'm really enjoying our time together. Your ship has such potential. With just a few more adjustments, I think we could turn this whole operation into something genuinely beneficial for galactic civilization." Ethak's biomechanical eye clicked as it focused on her with newfound understanding. She hadn't been broken by his methods. She'd been studying them, learning them, and ultimately improving upon them in ways that served her purposes rather than his. The hunter had become the hunted, and he hadn't even realized the chase had begun. By day 7, Warlord Ethak the Bone Crusher, conqueror of 17 star systems, scourge of the Outer Rim, and the galaxy's most feared collector of exotic suffering, was having what his ship's newly therapeutic AI insisted on calling a breakthrough moment in personal growth. His mighty flagship had been transformed into something that tour guides might enthusiastically describe as a floating wellness center with light-conquering capabilities. The torture chambers now featured aromatherapy diffused. The weapons arrays had developed a concerning tendency to fire warning shots, accompanied by diplomatic suggestion. The crew quarters had been optimized for better sleep cycles, which meant his previously terrifying warriors spent most of their time discussing the benefits of proper hydration and expressing genuine concern for each other's mental health. And at the center of it all sat his human prisoner, now relocated to what used to be his personal command suite after the ship's AI determined that her consultation services required more appropriate accommodation. "Status report," Ethak demanded, though his voice lacked its usual bone-crushing authority. 3 days of involuntary exposure to the ship's new calming frequencies had left him feeling oddly centered and deeply confused. Hexus consulted his datapad with the sort of methodical precision that had previously been reserved for calculating casualty rates. "Sir, our secondary fleet has officially declared us missing in action and possibly compromised. Admiral Cruix has assumed command of the Meridian operation and is requesting immediate clarification of our tactical position. Tell him we're conducting extended reconnaissance." Ethak growled, though the sound came out more like a contemplative rumble. "Sir," Hexus continued with obvious reluctance, "Admiral Cruix received our last transmission, the one where you suggested he consider the psychological impact of warfare on crew wellness, and recommended he explore alternative conflict resolution strategy." Ethak's biomechanical eye clicked rapidly as fragmented memories surfaced. Had he really sent that message? The last few days felt like they'd been filtered through some sort of therapeutic haze. What was his response? "He's dispatched 3 battle cruisers to investigate what he terms our obvious mental breakdown and possible mutiny situation," Vex reported from his position near what used to be the tactical display and now resembled a meditation corner complete with cushions and ambient light. "ETA, 4 hours. Through the ship's communication system, the human's voice drifted with casual friendliness. "Oh, is that the Admiral Cruix who conquered the Bellum cluster using scorched earth tactics? I've been analyzing his psychological profile from your military databases. Fascinating case study in unresolved trauma and compensatory aggression patterns. She's been reading our classified files, Thoke observed with the sort of academic interest that suggested he found the security breach more intellectually stimulating than alarming. All of them, the human confirmed cheerfully. Your data organization systems are remarkably comprehensive. I particularly enjoyed the section on interspecies psychological warfare technique. Though I have to say, most of your methodologies are based on some fairly outdated assumptions about emotional response patterns. Ethak stood slowly, his massive frame moving with the careful deliberation of someone whose worldview had been systematically deconstructed over the course of a week. You've been planning this from the beginning. Planning is such a strong word, she replied, and her voice carried the sort of gentle amusement usually reserved for explaining simple concepts to children. I prefer to think of it as adaptive optimism. You acquired me because you wanted to break something you perceived as fragile. But you never asked yourself why humans had survived long enough in a hostile galaxy to become collectible in the first place. The answer, Ethak realized with dawning horror, was becoming increasingly obvious. We're not fragile, the human continued, her tone maintaining its conversational warmth while delivering what amounted to a strategic briefing. We're adaptable. We don't break under pressure, we evolve. We study. We integrate. We optimize, and then we improve systems in ways their designers never imagined. On his command displays, Ethak watched as Admiral Crux's battle group dropped out of hyperspace, with the sort of aggressive positioning that suggested immediate hostile intent. 3 heavy cruisers, armed with enough firepower to reduce small moons to constituent atoms, facing off against his own vessel, which was currently broadcasting what appeared to be meditation music and diplomatic overtures. Sir, Hexus reported with obvious strain, Admiral Crux is demanding immediate surrender, and requesting permission to board for what he terms intervention and psychological evaluation. Tell him, Ethak said slowly, that we're negotiating. Negotiating with whom, sir? Ethak looked at his command crew, hardened warriors who were now discussing optimal hydration schedules and expressing concern about work-life balance. He looked at his ship's displays showing Crux's battle group, weapons powered and ready to enforce compliance. He looked at the peaceful agricultural world spinning beneath them, its inhabitants probably wondering why a notorious war fleet had chosen their planet for what appeared to be an extended diplomatic retreat. With the future, he said finally. Through the communication system, the human's voice carried a note of genuine approval. Now that's the kind of forward thinking that built interstellar civilizations. Though I should mention, your friend Admiral Crux's ships are showing some interesting structural resonance pattern. Amazing what you can learn about military hardware from analyzing comm frequencies and engine signatures. On the tactical display, Crux's flagship began experiencing what its crew would later describe as catastrophic system harmonic. Not weapon strikes or sabotage, just the kind of mechanical failure that occurred when someone who really understood engineering started humming the right frequency at precisely the wrong moment. Impossible, Vex breathed as they watched a heavy battle cruiser develop what appeared to be a ship-wide mechanical breakdown triggered by acoustic interference. She's not even on their vessels. She doesn't need to be, Ethak realized. She's taught our systems to teach their system. It's cascading optimization. Within 30 minutes, Admiral Crux's entire battle group was experiencing various degrees of adaptive system improvements that left them operationally functional, but strategically useless. Weapon systems that fired only warning shots. Navigation computers that suggested scenic routes to diplomatic venues. Life support systems optimized for stress reduction and conflict de-escalation. Admiral Crux sends his compliments, Hexus reported in the tone of someone reading his own obituary. He's requesting immediate conference to discuss what he terms unprecedented technological advancement with significant strategic implications. Through the ship's now melodious communication array, the human's laughter was warm and genuinely delighted. You know what the really beautiful part is, she said, and Ethak found himself leaning forward to catch every word. I never actually broke any of your systems. I just helped them become what they were always designed to be: efficient, adaptive and optimized for the well-being of their users. Turns out, when you strip away all the unnecessary cruelty and fear-based management, most civilizations naturally tend toward cooperation. Ethak stared at the displays showing 3 formerly terrifying battle fleets now apparently engaged in what could only be described as an impromptu peace conference above a meditation retreat planet. The warlord who tried to break her, he murmured, finally understanding the cosmic joke he'd stumbled into. She shattered him instead. Oh, I never tried to shatter you, the human corrected gently. I just gave you better tools to work with. Whether you use them to build something worthwhile, or go back to the old ways of doing things, that's entirely up to you. As if to emphasize the point, his ship's AI helpfully chimed in. Warlord, your stress levels have decreased by 43% over the past week, and crew efficiency ratings are at an all-time high. Shall I prepare diplomatic overtures for the Admiral, or would you prefer to return to previous operational parameters? Ethak looked around his transformed command center, at his crew of former terrors now engaged in what appeared to be a collaborative strategic planning session, at the peaceful world below and the confused but increasingly cooperative fleet above. The galaxy's most feared warlord had been completely systematically and thoroughly outmaneuvered by someone whose only weapon was the simple act of making things work better. And the most terrifying part, he was beginning to think he liked it that way.